Can you hear me? أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أيتها الأخوات أيها الأخوة أحييكم بتحية الإسلام تحية من عند الله مباركة طيبة السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Thank you so much for coming this evening, and I really on your behalf want to thank Mulna Ali and the whole team with all the names that were on the screen for what they have been doing, organizing these 2 days. And the visit between this afternoon, it was the khutbah, this evening the lecture, and inshallah tomorrow the workshop around the thoughts and what we are trying to do in the center. Trying also to involve students, thinkers, practitioners in 10 fields. And I hope that many of you will be here tomorrow to understand the philosophy behind the center and the objectives for us, because we are trying to work now with African countries, Asian countries, Western countries, and of course in the Middle East. The topic this evening is about the messenger, peace be upon him, and the deep understanding that is necessary. The deep understanding that is necessary from within for Muslims. And very often we are not very happy about the fact that people of other faiths, Jews, Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, even atheists and agnostics, when it comes to the messenger, والسلام, they don't get an understanding of what is our relationship as Muslims and in which way we are related to his person and at the same time his mission. And in fact, and this is the first point in my introduction, if you want to understand Islam, if you want to try to understand the very essence of Islam, the first thing that you have to do as Muslim, even if you know that you are a Muslim and that you believe in one God and that you are serious about the very meaning of it, Tawheed, there is the oneness of God, and the fact that you follow the last messenger and you acknowledge that there is the last message with the last messenger, peace be upon him. Even with this, the deep understanding of Islam doesn't start by reading the Quran. The Quran, as to understand Islam, is not an easy book. It's not an easy book to understand, it's not an easy book to analyze. And you have two ways of reading the scriptural source and the revelation. There is one which is only based on something which is a way to worship and to remember God, which is called in Arabic al-qira'at ta'abbudiyya, which means what you have to do to try to keep reading the Quran, because in fact the Quran is a book where you are communicating with God. Every time you open the book, it's as if you are starting a discussion. God is talking to you personally every time you read the book. And this is a way where it's something which is a way to worship and to remember. But to understand the principles, to understand the whole philosophy, the whole message, it's not easy when you come to read the Quran, because even, for example, the chronology is not there. You start reading the Quran with the verses that were revealed after 13 years, and then you end with, when you are reading, with the verses that were revealed at the beginning. And then when you want to understand the steps when as to the prohibitions and the obligations, it's very difficult. You cannot just read it like this. It means that here you have to be equipped. So it's one thing to get this deep worship and the understanding with your heart, and it's another to understand the legal framework and the legal philosophy and at the same time the principles and the objectives. So these are two different readings. Now, how can you enter into this deep understanding of Islam is in fact through the Prophet's biography. It's to understand his life. Why? Because his life is in fact, by definition, read in a chronological way. You are following the steps. What happened before he got the revelation, what happened when he gets the revelation, what happens when he starts changing his life, and what happens when he is starting to organize the community. So this is where you understand through his life the way the whole message of Islam was historically revealed and constructed and articulated. And this is where it's important to come with this understanding of the revelation through his life, understanding the message through his life, understanding the principles through his own implementation. So this is the starting point and what we have to do now. That's the introduction. The second point that we all know when we are Muslims is, in fact, the very essence of our relationship to God is based on what? Is it only to acknowledge that there is one God? This is the starting point. You say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. I testify that there is only one God and I don't worship anything else but Him. But what is said with your mind should now be deepened with your heart. Because what is coming from this relationship is and should be a relationship of love. So the highest objective of our life as Muslims is not to acknowledge that there is one God, is to open our heart to love Him and to thank Him for the life that He gave us, the gifts that He gave humanity, and the fact that we are coming back to Him, which the very understanding of our life is inna lillah, to God we belong, wa inna ilayhi raji'un, to God we will go back. Our journey between our birth and our death is just coming from Him and going back to Him. And in this life, the main objective is not to acknowledge with our mind, is to deepen our spirituality with our heart. And the best example, once again, is Him. This is why the second dimension of this love towards God means in Islam, you will get this deep love of God if you succeed in loving the Messenger. And this is what he said to Umar, radiallahu anhu, when Umar is saying, I love you almost, I love God more than you, but I love you as almost like I love myself. And he said, La yakfi ya Umar, it's not enough. You have to deepen your love towards me to understand who I am. And this means that from an Islamic viewpoint, when we come back to the Prophet ﷺ, and you understand what I'm saying now, when you understand what it is said by our tradition, your relationship to the Prophet ﷺ should be a relationship of love and understanding. You need to get something which is, how are you going to teach his life if the objective, if the goal of this life is to be able to love him. And to love him means to love him deeply, not at the periphery of something that could be sometimes the way we react. We see sometimes people who got from the Prophet ﷺ some teachings, and where he is insulted, for example, you heard about the cartoons and what happened in the West, and it's still, every 6 weeks we have a new controversy about this. The reaction that we have coming from the Muslims is based, yes, we love him and we don't accept this. The question is, the type of reactions that we have, are they coming from deep love and understanding and superficial love and reactions? Is that okay? You want me to take it in my hand? Is it better? Is that okay? Because depending on, like this is okay, but I'm not going to speak like this the whole thing. will be happy. Okay, he said, okay, so I will look at you. So, it's the way we understand Islam, and we have to educate is how do we get this deep understanding, this deep love, this spiritual love, this mahabba, which is the deep understanding of who he was, and not only the understanding of what were the rules that he was implementing, who he was, to love him for who he was, because in fact, he was the way, he was the model. And this is what we should. I don't know. I think I'm going to keep it. Sorry. Might be better like this. So, when you come to the Quran and you read, وَلَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ, there is in the messenger the best example. For those who believe in God, the best example is you look at his life and you try to understand the deep meaning and who he was. The best example is not only the way he behaved, but he behaved because he was a human being with specific characteristics and specific qualities. And we have to think about this for ourselves, but also for the way we have to teach Islam to our children and to be witnesses to the message of Islam before human beings. And this is where he himself in the Quran, he is asked to say, قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ يُوحَى إِلَيَّ أَنَّمَا إِلَهُكُمْ إِلَهٌ وَاحِدٌ. So he's saying, say, I'm a human being like you. And what is revealed to me that there is only one God. وَمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُ لِقَاءَ رَبِّهِ فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا. Meaning at the end, he is saying something which is essential. I'm just a human being. And the one who is hoping to come back to God and to be rewarded should understand it. He should do good deed, or she should do good deed, and not associating anything to God. Meaning, I'm just a human being. And this danger happened when he passed away. Remember, when he passed away, there was one who was so loving. He loved the Prophet. And this is why we have to be very cautious. You have to love him only as a human being. He is not God. He is a human being. And this is why in the Christian tradition, this dimension with the Prophet ﷺ was perceived as problematic. He was too human compared to the perception that Jesus was at the same time human and divine, having divine characteristics. In Islam, this is exactly why we should love him as a human being, because there is nothing which is in fact the divine characteristic. Allah wahid la ilaha illahu. And when the danger of this love being transformed into idealizing the Prophet ﷺ, what Umar said when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, he said, the first one who is saying that he is dead, I'm going to kill him. He will come back. Saying what? Exactly what was said in the Christian tradition. He is going to resuscitate. He's coming back. And Abu Bakr as-Siddiq stopped him, saying, no, stop it. No. The one who was perceived as fragile was the strongest one in spiritual terms. Asking Umar, the strong one, to deal with his own doubts, his own fragilities, and saying, no. Those who worshipped Muhammad, he is dead. But know that Allah Hayyun la yamut. This is what you have to come and to understand. Love him, follow him, do not idealize him, and know that the only one who is going to be with you everywhere is Allah and not the Prophet ﷺ. فَقَدْ مَاتْ. It's over. His his story is ending here, and he knew this. And he knew himself this. And this is why just before leaving, he sent the messengers, the messages to his own friends. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, who was crying, understood this. He understood that he was leaving. When it was, the revelations were coming, all these verses that were coming at the end, he was getting the message that the Prophet ﷺ was leaving. The point here that we have to remember, it's very essential for us, is getting the very deep human love to someone who was calling us to worship the only one God. And at the same time, to nurture, to deepen our understanding of his being, not through only his teachings and his prohibitions, but the way he was dealing and the way he was behaving. So, and this is something which is a danger for all human beings. You heard, I'm sure, the Chinese proverb. And the Chinese proverb, very often the Muslims, they think when you speak about Islam, you only quote verses and only quote a hadith. If you quote Chinese, it's what are you doing? So sometimes you have to qualify the Chinese proverb by saying it's an Islamic Chinese proverb. And why you can say it's Islamic? Because what any culture is having proverbs and understanding that are in agreement with our religion, they are Islamic by definition and by nature. Because wisdom is not to be qualified when it is said by a Muslim. Wisdom is to be qualified and acknowledged when it's coming from human beings, whatever your culture. And this is the meaning of the saying, which is "Al-hikmatu dallatul Muslim," is wisdom is the lost property of the Muslim. He will be the first to take it from wherever she or he finds it. And the proverb is saying, when the wise man is pointing out to the moon, the fool and the foolish and the crazy is looking at the finger. Meaning, something which is essential. You will see this with many Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ is pointing out and saying, I'm following a path towards God. Don't worship me, worship him. Don't love me too much and idealize me and try to get from me not only the way I deal with my qualities, but also the way I deal with my humanity. And this is where we understand this. And this is the deep difference in our tradition from the Christian tradition, and the way sometimes Jesus is understood not only as a prophet, as a messenger, but as someone who has this divine dimension. That this is where whatever is the very mystery of Trinity, and there is a mystery in Trinity in the Christian tradition that we cannot just sitting down here judge by saying this is just polytheism. I don't think it's as simple as this. But still, we might not get it rationally, but there is something which is a difference in the way we look at all the messengers, and among them the Prophet ﷺ, the last one, and of course Jesus alayhi salam, where we understand that his mission was a mission as a human being. Now, the third thing which is important when it comes to the life of the Prophet ﷺ, and we try to understand this, is there are many paradoxical dimensions. Many things that if you look at his life and you try to ponder over his life, you understand that there are things that are very paradoxical. In fact, as I was saying, he's calling to the divine and repeating, I am a human being. So something which is very often people who are calling to a message are trying to be, or sometimes asking to be followed for qualities that are beyond who they are. No, he's just saying, there is one God, I am a human being. First dimension, which could be understood as paradoxical. If you look at his life, all his life, everything that he's trying to do, he's asking the people, spread peace. When he arrived in Medina, after 13 years being repressed and rejected by his own people, and he kept on repeating a paradox. The people were saying, you are not one of us now. You are calling for a message that is destroying the very value of our society. He looked at them, he said, I don't share, I don't believe in what you believe, but you are qawmi, you are my people. So he distinguishes himself, and he make his message different, and at the same time he look at his people saying, you are still my people. So whatever is different in my message, I acknowledge the fact that our humanity is the same. Third paradox in the whole thing is calling for peace. Ifshu salam. He arrives in Medina, he says, Ifshu salam. And what he is going to face? Hatred and wars. So a paradox, once again, which is asking and calling for something and getting exactly the opposite in many, many ways during his life. Now, another thing which is interesting, he came with a message. Why do we call him the messenger? We call him the messenger because he's coming with a message, and the message is the revelation. El-Risala is the message. And then if you look at his life, it's very strange. Someone who came to spread a message and was for so many hours and in so many situations listening to people. Listening. Not coming and saying, this is my message, listen. No, listening. And sometimes he listened first before talking, which sometimes we do exactly the opposite. When we are, certain that I have something to say, listen to me. And I'm always quoting this, the title of this book, which is a very interesting book, saying, talk to me, I have something to tell you. Which is exactly the message of the Prophet ﷺ. Talk to me. Talk to me, I have something to tell you. I have a message. By this message, we are not going to get it if I don't know who you are. Talk to me and I will know how to say it. And how I will know how to say it doesn't mean I'm going to change the Quran. The Quran is going to stay the same, but I am going to know how to say it, how to translate it, how to implement it. Why? Because I know you. You are not going to change people if you come with a message without understanding humanity. So he's here to come to spread a message and at the same time listening. The second thing which is important as to the message itself, which is paradoxical, is that he's going to come with very deep understanding, very deep message, very deep meanings. And then he's known as someone who is talking very few words. We think that we have something important to say. I have to take time. He's talking not too much, but he's saying very deep things. And this is something which is very, what does it mean? It means you better pay attention. You better pay attention. Because it's not the quantity, it's the quality. And the quality is few words with an ocean of meanings that you have to ponder and you have to understand. The other paradoxical dimension that we have when it comes to the Prophet ﷺ is also something that we need to think about. When he was coming and, the beginning of his message, when he was in fact converting all his life and coming to serve Allah because he got the first revelation when he was alone and being far from the people. He was trying to look and seek the truth. In fact, at the beginning, the first revelations were telling him that the first obligations were to pray during the night. And then slowly coming with the community is come during the night to God in order to get the very deep understanding of this relationship with God. And then when 13 years later he arrives in Medina, he will say something which is important and has to be understood. He's going to change the world. He's not going just to come with a mission. He's going to change the world, and he's going to change the first city will be Medina. It's going to change. In Medina al-Munawwara, the city of the Prophet ﷺ is going to change out of his presence and with a vision. He's going to reform this society. And at that time, when he's talking about changing the relationship with human being, when he's saying spread peace, ifshu salam, He's saying, أطعموا الطعام, give food to the poor people. Silul arham, just protect the relationship with the family. He's saying something which is central. Sallu wan nasu niyam. Pray while the people are sleeping. And he's sending a paradox. You want to change the world during the day? Sometimes pray during the night. Because praying during the night is giving you the quality of your relationship with God. The quality of your relationship with God will be the quality of you changing the society among people. That's something which is, you try to change during, and you are very active, and very often you think that that's it. But you can't. In spiritual terms, the quality of your relationship with God depends on the way you deal with your nights, not only the way you deal with your days. If you get the very deep message of Islam and something which is important. Another paradoxical dimension is that he came, and what the Quran is saying about him is that he is al-abd, he's a servant. And in fact, very quickly, he's going to get power. And in fact, during all his life, he is getting power, and he will behave as a servant. He used his power to serve the community. And this is also something that you can understand only if you understand the deep spiritual meaning. If you get power in intellectual terms or in human terms, you are going to take power and you are going to use this power, and sometimes you are going to use people and you are going to be served by the people. The Prophet ﷺ was powerful by the way he was a servant, by the way he was serving, by the way he was dealing with the poorest people in the society. So this is also something which is important, which is something that you cannot get only by coming with something which is an analysis, an intellectual take. There is a secret here that should be understood in the way he was behaving. And the best example of this is he was struggling, and for years he was, as a minority, as a community that he was protecting that could have been destroyed in Mecca and then in Medina. And then after all these years, he became victorious from Medina to Mecca. The way he came back is the biggest paradox of someone who is victorious. He won, it's over. The Ahl Quraysh are acknowledging the fact that they lost, and he come back prostrated. He's prostrating on his horse, meaning it's not a victory over a human being. Is serving the one. And I'm coming as the servant of humanity. My war was not against you, human beings. My war was against your arrogance, was against your neglectfulness, your denial that there is a truth. But when I win, I prostrate. When some win, they are arrogant. It's the opposite. It's the message of humility that he had in all the situations, which is once again, in human terms, a paradox that you cannot get if you then understand the deep meaning. So when you come to his life and you saw all these dimensions, you understand that you have to go deeper in understanding his life in the way we have to deal with this. And now, two things that were important. He kept on from the very beginning. Al-Quran is saying, the revelation is saying, one day you are going to be judged. One day you will be questioned. One day you will come back to God. And this is the essence, the beginning of religion. Is, you know what? You have this life. You can behave as much as you can. فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. If you want, you can believe. If you want, you can deny. That's your choice. But one day you will come back to him. There is a judgment. And all his life, he's reminding the people of the judgment of God, and he's forgiving the people. He was full of rahmah. He was full of compassion and forgiveness. Being able at the same time to tell you, beware, be careful what you are doing. But when he's dealing with the people, he's not judgmental. He's not judging. He's saying God will judge, but I am here to remind you that there is something which is important with your life, and with your life, and He's forgiving the people. And this was something which was a teaching for all the people. So he himself talking about the judgment, but not putting himself in the situation where he's God judging the human beings. And this is why sometimes Muslims don't get that. They are doing what the Prophet never did, alayhi salam. He never came by judging the people and being able to tell them, you are going to be... the only situation where people were acknowledged as entering paradise, this was through a revelation, through an ilham, an inspiration. But he was not judging the people. He never did that. Even with the people who betrayed him in a situation of war, he was never putting them in a situation where he was judging. If he was to do this, this was in the name of God through an inspiration. But never he put himself. Now you look at our communities and some of our brothers and sisters, they say, yes, I'm following the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ. Haram. And be careful. You will end. You know, some are able to tell you that you are going to end up in hellfire. They know it. And they can put it and say, we are following. The Prophet ﷺ never did that. Never. Not only he never did that with human beings, but more importantly, during the night, with his wife, Aisha radiallahu anha, with his wife, when all the people are sleeping, he's standing up, praying and asking for forgiveness. He's praying and doing, dua and supplications, asking Allah, Allah forgive me. And he's praying during the night, and his wife is just surprised. How come you have been forgiven? And say, أتتكلف هذا يا رسول الله? Is it not too much? غفر الله لك ما تقدم وما تأخر من ذنبي. He forgave you everything. Why are you still praying during the night? And look at his answer. Not only he's not judging the people, but he knows that Allah forgave him, is forgiving him, and he say, أفلا أكون عبدا شكورا? Should I not be a servant, abdan shakura, thanking God? So he's praying. He's not judging during the day, but he's asking forgiveness during the night while he's already forgiven. Exactly the opposite of all of us. No one in this room can say, I'm forgiven. I know it. It's done. He told me that. You can't do that. So you don't know, but you judge. He knew that he was forgiven, and he was not judging. Which is the very essence of the message, the paradox here in someone who knew that he was forgiven and still was praying during the night and thanking God, which is the state of humility and spirituality, which is essential here. And if you look at his life, now you can understand, all this is deep. In fact, when you meet someone, any human being, and you see things that are apparently contradictory, that there is something which is a paradox. You have two ways of dealing with this. It could be a hypocrite, or it could be something which is very deep in this way he was dealing with humanity. And the Prophet ﷺ was all about this, very deep. So when you come to him and you try to understand, you should try to be deep in your understanding. Take time to understand the details, not only to know the dates. It happens this day. No, what happened, how it happened, and what was important. Now, let me start with some of the things that were very human in his attitude, and this is why for us, he's the messenger, alayhi salatu wassalam. In fact, in Islam, as I was saying, the revelation came to him to say, you are a human being. And when you start thinking about the Prophet ﷺ in the way he was a model for us, as it is said in the Quran, and I said this, you try to say, okay, in which way he was a model? And then you understand that you try to understand his life. You go through the chronology. And at the beginning of the revelation, just before the revelation, there is something there which was very important. Something that every one of us experiences and can go through, depending on where you are with your faith, is seeking truth and trying to get this certainty, al-yaqeen. Al-yaqeen in the Quran is synonymous to death, because you will know at that point. But in fact, you are trying to get this certainty, the certainty that there is one God and you are going back to Him. And he himself, during all his life, he was, during all his life, someone with great morality. But when he reached 35, it was too much for him. What he was looking around him was a state of disappointment, worrying about the truth, worrying about the state of affairs, worrying about the fact that the people were acting in a way where they were worshipping idols. And he started a kind of a quest for truth. And then he was isolating himself. And when you see this, as human beings, us as Muslims, you understand that before he got the revelation, and sometimes you are in this situation, sometimes you are Muslims, and you say, yes, I believe in Allah, I believe in God, but at one point in your life you experience something which is doubts, which is, there is something missing. Yes, I'm praying, yes, I'm fasting, yes, there is this in my life, but something is missing. There is something which is, no, I am not at peace with my heart. And when he went to Ghar Hira, he was looking for God, he was looking for the answer, he was not at peace with himself. What he experienced before getting the answer, we all experience, even though we may have the answer sometimes. So sometimes we get it, sometimes we feel good, and sometimes no, there's something which is missing. And this state of peace, الطمأنينة, which is what we have, there's 3 steps that we have in the Quran, النفس الأمارة والنفس اللوامة والنفس المطمئنة. This situation where our nafs, our soul, our being sometimes is troubled. There is something that, and you feel that your ego is taking over. Sometimes you are in a state of tensions, and sometimes you feel that you are quiet. Sometimes you experience something which is very special. Very special. It could happen one night, it could happen in one prayer, it could happen with one supplication, it could happen when you meet sometimes you meet someone and his or her presence, you say, there is something that I felt that was beyond what I experience usually. And what he experienced before getting the revelation is something which we can experience. And what was the situation? He was looking for the truth, and then Jibril alayhi salam came to him, Gabriel, and he came to him, and this is also something which is important because this angel is connecting all the traditions before. It's in the Christian tradition, the Jewish tradition. This is the same one God and the same angel coming to the Prophet ﷺ. And when he spoke to him, when he revealed, the first attitude of the Prophet ﷺ are very, very important, and you have to deal with them. We go too quickly on this. We go very quickly. We don't get this sense of humanity, what happened at this very, very specific moment. He was looking for the truth, and then Jibreel alayhi salam came to him. It's better when you can hear me? It's better like this. Okay, we'll keep it like that then. And the first thing that happened when he got the first revelation, he was scared. He was scared and he needed support. And he went to his wife and he asked her to cover him. Zammiluni, Zammiluni, you know the story. But this moment, when he's getting a message, and in fact he's scared that he can be misled, and he understands that I need protection. But who is going to protect me? He's alone. But because he is not divine, because humanity is not you are alone, only one God, only God is alone. But you need help. You need someone who can help you. And he went to his wife, and his wife was the means God put in this situation to protect him. And it means, in fact, don't try to avoid your fear. Don't try to avoid your fear. Don't try to avoid your trouble. In fact, ask yourself in your life, who are the people who can help you to face your fears? And the people you love. The people you love. And in fact, she protected him with her love by telling him something which is essential. Saying something which is essential here. You are a good person. You care about the poor. You care about the family. So the protection to something which is coming from God is the bright side of your personality. The people you love, they can see things that the people who are not seeing you, not loving you, cannot see. Your protection is love, and from the starting point of the revelation, the best protection for someone who is serving God is the love of God and the love of the people. This is why it is said, when Allah loves someone, He makes her or he be beloved by people. Not all of them. Not all of them. He called for peace, but people are going to attack him. But they are the good people who will love her or love him. This is your protection. Don't think that your protection is to have, this high security protection. I think that was not the Prophet ﷺ. He was protected by the people who loved him. And the first is his wife, and then it happened. And then you understand that in his life, when you go through this, all these dimensions of his humanity were there. You know that at one point the revelation stopped. And the Prophet ﷺ started something that we all experience. And anyone who is telling you that this is not good, don't get it. It is good to doubt yourself, even though you don't doubt God, but to doubt yourself. And he experienced this. And for the people who just reject this, it's in Bukhari. It's a hadith. When there was a break, the revelation stopped. And he was starting to think, I'm not good enough to get the revelation. He even wanted to kill himself. The Prophet ﷺ, at the beginning, he was doubting himself, thinking, it might be not good enough for this revelation. And he was the al-fatra, for some scholars, is 18 months, for some it was 3 years, with no revelation. And he doubted himself. But what does it mean, doubting? Wow. Okay. He's telling me about the time, and I was just ending my introduction. Anyway, as usual. So, I forgot now. Yes, he had this. He had this temptation, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected him by starting again the revelation. And I think that it's also something which is important when you deal and you try to understand the Prophet ﷺ, this dimension that he was a human being. And basharun mithlukum means, I'm going through this. I went through this. I went through this doubt. And in fact, the only way to get the very deep understanding of what we say when we say, Atawakkalu ala Allah, I put all my trust in God, means be careful, doubt yourself, not to be arrogant, to know the very understanding of humility. And humility is this, is doubt yourself. And say, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. In anything, you can be the best in any dimension, but remember, doubt yourself. Anything could happen. And this it's happened in the Prophet's life. Even something which is very, very deep in the way he was talking to the people. He was saying things to the people that sometimes we don't say because we are scared to appear too fragile and too human. In fact, once he saw a woman and he was attracted, and he protected himself by going to his wife, and he said it. It's a hadith. What does it mean? Why the Prophet ﷺ, the messenger, al-Mukhtar, the one who was chosen, is saying to his companions, that happened to me. Why? Why is he saying this? To make it clear, I am a human being. What you're experiencing is what I am experiencing. And don't look at my weakness. Look at the strength of my answer. My weakness is to be attracted. The strength of my answer, I checked, I mastered, and I went to the halal. To be attracted by the haram is natural. To resist the haram and to go to the halal is the spiritual way. This is why he is the Prophet ﷺ. This is why he is the Prophet ﷺ. And he is confident enough to say this to the companion. Get it. Think about it. This is me and this is who you have to follow. Not because I am weak, I am a human being. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me the strength to be able to follow the path. So look at my answer. So when you look at someone, and this is where it's very important, when you have a human being and you can have a scholar and you have someone, don't idealize the people. But what you should get is not only their qualities, but as we deal with the Prophet ﷺ is the way he deals with the weaknesses. When the companion of the Prophet ﷺ went in Ghazwat Badr, and he was asking him about the strategy. Look at this. Look at the way he was dealing with the people who were coming to challenge him. And say, is this a revelation or is it your opinion? He said, no, it's my opinion. Just to acknowledge the fact it's my opinion. He said, that's wrong. That's not a good strategy. We need to change the way we are, and we have to protect the water in order for the enemy not to get water. So we have to change this. Your strategy is not a good one. He's challenging his authority as a human being. And what the Prophet ﷺ is doing is that you are right. We're going to change. So there is no mistake with the Quran when I am the messenger. But when I'm trying to deal with worldly affairs, anything could happen. Challenge the Prophet ﷺ. Challenge his choices because he's only a human being. So when you get this, you understand that it's a teaching about leadership. About leadership. So he's not because it's the Prophet ﷺ that he is infallible, that he is not going to make mistakes or he's not going to have wrong decisions. He can have wrong decisions when it comes to the world, and he said it. Even he's saying, when two of you are coming to me and they're asking me to judge, if someone is lying and I give you the right, this guy is going to have the double punishment because he's misleading me. He's trying to use my position and to try to make me lie about the decision out of his own life. So he's going to pay twice. So this is something which, in our way of dealing with the Prophet ﷺ, we have to be quite deep in understanding what was important. The second thing which it's also important with the Prophet ﷺ is the way he was. Before he was the Prophet ﷺ, it is said in the Quran, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. You have the good, this good behavior. You have the good character. In fact, what we are talking about when it comes to ethics. And he said himself, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I was sent but to beautify and to complete the good character. This is my mission. And this is where when we come to the Prophet ﷺ, in the way he is implementing the principles, in the way he is implementing the rules, this is where we have to deal with the way he behaved with human beings. And as I said, he was not judging. And as I said also, he was taking his time and listening to people. And trying himself to be much more disciplined and much more demanding with himself than with others. He even didn't want Taraweeh to be, he didn't want to pray Taraweeh in front of people, not to make it an obligation. So he came back at home to make Taraweeh alone, just not to make it an obligation. Meaning that in the way he behaved, he's always very much self-critical and trying to reform his own behavior and his own way of dealing with things, and to teach the people in a way which is full of compassion, presence, and listening to them. And it happens so many times. We have so many stories where he is full of compassion and forgiven
about what is happening. And you know this situation where the people are coming, and even Umar radiallahu anhu can be very tough, and they want to be very tough. He's always protecting, always protecting. And in the situation where it's min al-kaba'ir, the highest, the biggest mistakes and sins that you can have, he's protecting. And he said, Man satara mu'minan fi dunya, satarahu Allahu fi dunya wal akhirah. Protect the people in this world. Don't come by exposing the people. He's not trying to expose the people. He's always trying to protect them from the knowledge of others. So their mistakes not to be known by the people, and trying to protect them. And this is where he was always dealing in such a way. The third dimension in his behavior is something which is even deeper than that. If you look at the beginning of his life as the messenger, there is something which is the secret of what I was talking about in the way he was dealing with nature and animals. And all his sayings, what he's repeating, is the way he is saying and sending the message. If you want to be close to God, respect nature. If you want to be close to God, respect animals. And he's quoting stories after stories after stories, where he's saying and asking the people, be careful in the way you deal with water, for example. Even if you make your ablution, don't waste water. Even when the river is there and you think the water will be, no. The question is a principle in the way you deal with trees, with water, with all natures. And taking and telling us about stories where a woman, because she protected a dog, and it's good for Muslims to listen to this. She protected a dog. Some of the Muslims, dog, a'udhu billah. And in Muslim majority countries, the way we deal with dogs is just unacceptable. She protected a dog, and for this she will enter paradise. And a woman who was bad with a cat is going to be punished for this. Meaning, be careful. It's not enough to pray 5 times a day if you don't get that. If you don't get that, to pray 5 times a day means that, in fact, the way you deal with nature, the way you deal with water at home. You know, this is what the makarim al-akhlaq is. This is the good behavior. When nobody is seeing you at home, be careful with water. Be careful with what you have in your, you are in a consumerist society. In the United States of America, sometimes when you eat, they give you, I don't know for how many. And we do exactly the same. We take half of it and we leave the rest. During Ramadan, we do the same. How come? This is not following the Prophet ﷺ. This is not following the Prophet ﷺ. He was and saying, all what you see here, سَخَّرَ لَكُم مَا فِي السَّمَوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, all this was put here just for you to thank Him. But the way you thank Him is not to waste, is to respect. And as I said this morning in the khutbah, he was crying when the verses were coming telling him, look at nature, these are signs, respect nature. So he was very respectful with nature, but he was also very respectful with time. And this is why we pray 5 times a day, because إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ كَانَتْ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كِتَابًا مَوْقُوتًا. The prayers, when you pray, this is where you have to be disciplined with time. The Prophet ﷺ was very disciplined with time. If you want to change yourself, if you want to change your family, if you want to change a society, you have to deal with time. And when you deal with time, you have to be disciplined. And the way, Allah, it's time. You know, when the people are saying time is money, this is an American saying, which is not an Islamic one, not as the Chinese. Chinese was Islamic, the American is not. No, time is not money. In Islamic term, in Islamic reference, time is life. And life is much more than money. Life is you. Life is what you are doing out of you. And the way you deal with time is the way you deal with yourself. Wasting time is as wrong as wasting water, wasting money, wasting food. All what you waste with time is as if you are wasting something that Allah gave you. So this is the way we have to deal with this, and it's very important in the way you deal with our society. And as you have time today, it's important because the time you have to use it in a way which is, it's finished, it's 5 minutes? I have extends. Okay, so this is the way he was dealing with time, and if you look at the way he was dealing with human beings, it was all the same. It was all based on this. The way he was respecting nature, he was respecting time. And the way he was respecting time, he was respecting human beings. And among the people he's respecting, he was respecting the poor people, the people who are not seen by the society. Sometimes this is a paradox, and why this is what it is said in the Quran. The powerful in Medina, the powerful in Mecca say, look at the people who are following you. They are all poor people. In fact, for them, the quality and the value of someone was out of what they have. Islam is coming by saying your value is out of who you are. And if you are sincere, if you are ready to struggle for what is right, you are much more than all what they have. But the powerful, we're talking about this dimension. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ was serving the poor. And he taught his daughter, serve the poor around the mosque in Medina. The poor were there. And he taught his own daughter, Fatima Zahra, serve them. And when it was too much for her, she wanted someone to help her. She said, no, I can't. I can't do that. No privilege for my daughter. I can give you just some supplication to give you some power. Nobody to help you, but prayers to give you more strength in the way you are dealing with the poor people. So this is also something which is important in the way he was dealing, and everything, dealing with nature, dealing with time, dealing with human beings, dealing with animals, you can see a consistency. And the consistency is based on 4 words. The first one, which is essential in everything, is respecting. He was respecting. And respecting is always to say, I know that beyond who you are, there is one God who is telling me to respect the way He gives you life and He gives you existence. I respect. Out of this respect, there is a second word, which is thanking God always. Whatever is happening, thanking. Even with himself, he's thanking God during the night. While his wife is saying, Ya Rasulullah, are you sleeping? He said, my body is sleeping, but my heart is awake. So my eyes are sleeping, but I am awake. So he was thanking God in his life. This was a constant dimension. The third word that you will have in his life, and this is why you have to ask yourself, where is respect in your life? Where is thanking in your life? How much do you thank him and do you thank people? And it is said, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man la yashkurullah, man la yashkurun nas." The people who are not thanking the people, thanking the human beings, they are not thanking God. The way you thank the people for what they are doing. And there is something which is a paradox here. When you do something, you should not wait for the people to thank you. But for the people who are getting it, they should not forget to thank them. This is the relationship. And then the fourth word was, so first is respecting. Second is thanking. The third one is what? I forgot. Serving. And the fourth one is reforming. Because it's not enough to serve. What he was doing, wherever he was, is I respect, I thank, I serve, and I transform. I change the world. I should reform the world. And this dimension is everywhere in his life, and he is reforming out of this love, out of this respect, and out of this thanking Allah always. But he's not here just to spread a message. He is here to change the world. And then ask yourself in your life today, not only if you are following the right and wrong, and this is clear, you have to do that. But when you follow in the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ, you have to ask yourself the dimension of respect, the dimension of thanking Allah, and then serving, and then transforming. And my last point that I want to make, coming to my conclusion here, is just to think about the last word here. When we are dealing with reforming. Because the way he was with humanity as a human being was based on this dimension that doubting himself, in necessity of love, needing the people around him, supported, relying on God and supported by people, it was always a question of a struggle. And the central word here that we need to understand and beware and be careful. In any society, and especially in the United States or in the West, we have to be very careful, because the way people now are talking about jihad is becoming a dirty word. You don't speak about jihad, because the way it was translated is a holy war or violence. Now you come to the life of the Prophet ﷺ and to understand that everything in his life was about jihad, when we understand the concept of reforming and resisting and reforming. This is the meaning of jihad. What he first had to do, he got the revelation in a specific culture. And what the Prophet ﷺ had to do is to resist tribalism. And tribalism is people coming from a clan or tribe saying, we are better than others, and say, that's not right. You are good depending on your principles, not your belonging. You are good American, not because you say, God bless America, even though America and the government is going to kill people. You are good American when you are clear with your principle. If my government is going to kill innocent people, I should stand up. You are good American when you remind America of the right principles, not when you support blindly the government. This is the way you should be with Muslims. Exactly the same. You are a good Muslim not only when you are supporting Muslims, whatever they do, but when you are supporting Muslims when they are right and resisting them where they are wrong. You belong to your principles. And he was acting against the culture of clans, tribes, nationalism that we have today. This is the first attitude. The Islamic principles are based on your principles first, not your belonging. You belong to your principles first. And this was the first jihad, and it came with La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, never belong or put something which is a belonging that is going to prevent you from being faithful to your principles. So the way he also had to deal with the culture in the Arab peninsula was the way they were dealing with children. He used to kiss them, and they said, the Bedouin was saying, we don't kiss children here. I say, I'm sorry, this is ar-Rahmah. It's coming from ar-Rahmah. It's the mercy that Allah is teaching us. Kiss your children. Show them affection. And if your culture is telling you, don't say too much, I love you, in the name of Islam, repeat it more and more. Cultural resistance, because some of us are like this, say, oh, it's strange that you are always talking about love and say, I love you. And so what? If you are not sure about I love you, say, I love you for the sake of Allah. Like this you are protected. Okay? It's no misunderstanding. Because some of you have some, okay? You get that? This is the way he was resisting to the culture, and it's also important. And also about women. Women, he was resisting. The first resistance is to say the women who are following me are as valuable as men. And the first was Khadija. So this is a cultural resistance. The cultural resistance is no, the value of Khadija is not less because she's a woman. It's as valuable as men. She says La ilaha illallah. Now you have to respect this. And he put his daughters, his wife, and then all the women who was within the community at the same level. First, cultural resistance. Second resistance, which is the jihad, is also the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling him, you are going to be challenged intellectually. And what is said in the Quran, لا تطيع الكافرين وجاهدهم به جهادا كبيرا. Struggle, strike in the name of the Quran against what they are saying. It means make your mind. Your struggle, your first resistance is an intellectual resistance. You are in the United States of America. You live in this country, and you have people who are atheists and people who are now trying and spreading around Islamophobia. You Muslims, you are such and such. Your struggle is not to just reject them, is an intellectual jihad. Is to understand what they are saying, from where they are saying, and why they are saying it, and to respond. And sometimes not to respond because it's too silly. It's not the. It's just to protect, to say something else. So the Prophet ﷺ was getting from the very beginning this intellectual jihad. The third jihad, it's also something which is very important, and he was taught in the Quran. I'm going to my conclusion very quickly, I promise. I have a very long conclusion. It's about diversity. When, for example, he is coming and he really thinks, the Prophet ﷺ, as we think as Muslims, that Islam is the last revelation. It's the last revelation. But the Quran is telling him, you are the last revelation, but it doesn't mean that all the other religions are going to disappear. You need to deal with them. And this is what the Quran is telling him. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعْرَفُوا. We made you tribes and nations. And the Prophet ﷺ is keeping this in Medina. And is a jihad which is the old tribes, Al-Aws wal-Khazraj, all what we had, this sectarian belonging, is over. Now you might be Christians and Jews and Muslims. Now it's time to live together. And in Medina, the first resistance is to say, we might have the truth, but we don't deny the existence of the other. This is Islam. This is Islam. You are Christians, you are Jews, you have the right to stay. La ikraha fi din. This is the jihad of diversity. And not only a jihad of diversity with others, a jihad of diversity within. Umar, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, and the companions, they didn't have the same opinions. But he was wise enough to say, my community is a community of diversity, it's not a community of uniformity. Omar is not Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. But they are all brothers and sisters in Islam. Now you have to get it. And it's good in Phoenix, in 2013, just to remember that this is also the teaching that came from the Prophet ﷺ, that he was dealing with a jihad of diversity. For diversity, in the name of diversity, because Islam is accepting diversity and celebrating diversity. Not only among schools of law and schools of thought as Muslims, not only about religious affiliations, this is it, but also in colors. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافُ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ وَأَلْوَانِكُمْ. Meaning, any one of you in this room who has a slight temptation towards something that is called racism, towards black people, or people of other colors, or Arabs that are not from Al-Maghrib, or Egyptians, or Americans who are too white and too American to be good Muslim, this is racism, and this means we need a jihad against all kinds of racism, and this is one of the jihads of the Prophet ﷺ. And when he arrived in Medina, what he started to do is not only to build the mosque. He built the mosque, but he went to the market. And in the market, he changed the rules in the market to make them fair. Fair rules in economy. Knowing and saying what? There is an economic jihad here. If you are serious about justice, you think about economy, you think about money, you think about social justice. This was one of the jihads. And he started in Medina by saying to the Muslims, you are brothers and sisters in Islam, but now you have to change the rule in the market. The market is a center of power. And I think that also something that you need to realize. And then a last jihad, which is important, and we don't celebrate this enough. He arrived in Medina, and he knew the way the Meccan people were dealing with arts and imagination. And he was talking to the people when there was a marriage, and he said, have you sent the singers to this marriage? Because the Ansar, they like it. And he was struggling against people who were using poetry against him. But when a poet came to him and was celebrating the message and the truth, he celebrated him, and he took his clothes and put on him to protect him. Meaning that there is something which is a jihad of aesthetics and beauty. Allahu Jamil yuhibbul jamal. And he was saying to the people, don't get me wrong. Islam is coming, and the very essence of the Quran. وإن كنتم في ريب مما نزلنا على عبدنا فأتوا بسورة من مثله إن كنتم I have to remember the verse. وإن كنتم في ريب مما نزلنا على عبدنا فأتوا بسورة من مثله وادعوا شهداءكم إن كنتم صادقون وإن لم تفعلوا ولن تفعلوا فاتقوا النار. So the point here is, if you have a doubt about the truth of this message, come with one chapter like this one, the Quran. Why? Because the beauty of the Quran, the in-depth of the Quran is in itself a message. And then the Prophet ﷺ was celebrating this imagination and this culture and coming to take what the Ansar were liking as something which is a cultural dimension. I think that we have to remember this, that in Islam, from the very beginning, all the people who are saying, the Prophet ﷺ was rejecting poetry and anything which has to do with aesthetics. It's wrong. He was very, very aware of the power of singing, accepting what the people like, as long as it is within what the Islamic principles are accepting. For example, insult and neglecting and undignified words. This is not what he wanted, but dignified elevation, spiritual elevation. All this was also a jihad that was coming from the Prophet ﷺ. When you get this whole picture, you understand that the very beginning of this journey of the Prophet ﷺ was a very important one. We understand all this jihad. Now you understand where we have to struggle. And when the people are now rejecting the Prophet ﷺ, or what we saw, for example, with the movie here, the video in the States, or the cartoons I think that if you come to understand this, the best answer is not to be passionate and insulting. It's to understand the very meaning of who he was, in the way he was dealing with all these jihads, in a very wise way. Very, very, very wise way. Never insulting, never rejecting, and make the people understand the very essence of the religion. So we as Muslims, we have to ask ourselves the way we love him. We have to ask ourselves the way we talk about him. We have, more importantly, to ask ourselves the way we follow him, the way we follow the Prophet ﷺ. This is something which should be deeper in our way of understanding. And what we got from his life at the end is that he was serving God, but what he got from all this journey is a sense of freedom and liberation. Remember at the end when he was talking to Aisha, he was coming, he wanted to leave, he wanted to go back, and he wanted to live this life. The way he was dealing with people was always a way to liberate himself from his ego and serving people, and this is the way he was close to God. And for every one of us, the true question when we follow the Prophet ﷺ, the quest for this truth is the quest for our own liberation, from our ego, from our doubts, seeking this peace that he was struggling for and saying, spread peace. Ifshu salam. Ifshu salam means spread love, respect, thank the people, thank God, reform the society, and reform the society by serving the human beings, serving nature, and while in whatever you try to do, be someone who, because we are serving God, we are serving human beings. And this is what he said, the best among you is the best for humanity. This is the way the Prophet ﷺ should be understood from his spiritual life, and the way, inshallah, we can understand that we have to reform our own life today, because he is talking to us today. Walhamdulillah, wallahu a'lam wa ala wa ahkam. Wassalamu alaikum, and sorry, Muhammad, Muna, Muhammad. I want to ask Muhammad.
Thank you so much. So the take-home message is, in order to love the Prophet, which every Muslim will say that they love him, we gotta really get to know him intimately, at an intimate level. And if you learned a lot and you were engaged in what Professor Ramadan was talking about, and you want more, you want to really dive into the life of the Prophet ﷺ at this intimate level. A lot of us, we know the details, but do we really know the meaning behind it? We have his book, In the Footstep of the Prophet ﷺ, which is a continuation of this lecture, inshallah. The books are sold outside. We have a few minutes for questions and answers. Please pass all your questions to the people who are collecting them. We won't have a lot of time to answer the questions, but we'll try and group them and have thematic answers, inshallah. So please remain seated, pass on the questions. We will have, there are 4 books of Professor Ramadan that are out on sale. Radical Reform, in the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ, and then Radical Reform, which talks about what the center is based on, and this transformative change, rather than accepting and adapting and creating Islamic islands within an un-Islamic world. It talks about transforming the reality. Then we also have another book, A Quest for Meaning, and for those of you who are interested in current events, he has written a book on the Arab awakening and Islam, which is also on sale. You can buy the books outside, and then you can come back in for book signing, but it's late, and we only have the room for a limited time, and he's exhausted. He's been traveling around the country, so we're only going to have a limited number of books signed, inshallah. But we will have a book signing and book sale also tomorrow at the Islamic Center in Scottsdale. The program starts at 10 o'clock in the morning. We'll have an hour to an hour and 20 minutes, 15 minutes for lunch at noon. And then we'll pick up again, inshallah, and we'll end at 3:30. You guys go through them? I'm sorry. So the first question is, we got is, did the Prophet ever sin? So about similar questions about infallibility.
But that's a good question. In anything which has to do with the way he was getting the revelation, of course, he was protected from any kind of mistake and sin. In what he was doing in his life, if you listen to his wife saying, "You have been forgiven," mean all the sins that you can have made and you can be making are forgiven in the way he is becoming the example. So the Prophet ﷺ, in worldly terms, was a human being, and a human being by definition is committing sin and asking to be forgiven. And you know that the Prophet ﷺ is saying we have 2 hadiths when he's saying, "I'm asking for forgiveness 70 times a day, and I'm asking for forgiveness," in another hadith, 100 times a day. So there are things that in the way sometimes he was forgetting, you know that sometimes he was forgetting that he prayed 2 instead of 4, and then he was reminded by the people. These are things that we know in his life, and then he might also, for example, have been misled by people who were lying to him. So these are things that he was not infallible in the way he was dealing with his worldly life, but he was protected and he was in that way forgiven by God. This is what is coming out of his biography.
There's a question. There is a question about the intra-community rifts across sectarian lines, and it talks about how if diversity is both in color and beliefs and different trends, why is it that the Muslims are not condemning the killing of Shia Muslims. And can you speak a little bit to the relationship and the what needs to happen in terms of across sectarian ones? Because a lot of times we talk about interfaith, but we don't talk much about intra-faith.
Yes, during this last, it's not. Is it okay? No. Everything is dying here. And one day we will die. And you are laughing. Okay. That's good to know. Anyway, about what is happening today, over the last few years, it's quite clear that the divisions, and especially the relationship between the Sunni and the Shia, is becoming a very, very critical topic. Now, we should start from the very beginning, that Sunni and Shia are Muslims. We are not agreeing, and there are some, of course, are going too far in the way they are idealizing Ali karamallahu wajha, but the mainstream Shia tradition and Sunni tradition, we are all Muslims and we should respect one another. What is happening today is we have some trends, sometimes the very literalists, who are even saying Shia are even more dangerous than people of other faiths because they are destroying Islam from within. And this type of discourse is very dangerous because it's a rejection of 10 to 15% of the Muslims who are acknowledging the main principles of Islam, and we should stick to the fact that we are all Muslim. Now, having said this as a position of principle, we should be very, very aware and cautious with what is happening in the Muslim majority countries now. So I agree. We are always talking about interfaith dialogue, but we need intra-community dialogue in many ways. Because we are not dealing in the right way with the accepted diversity in Islam. Yes, there are Shia and there are Sunni, and now within the Sunni tradition you have literalists, you have reformists, you have Sufi, you have rationalists. We have to accept this as long as you are not adding something to Islam or subtracting something with Islam, which is said to halil haram or to harrim halal, making something illicit licit or something licit illicit. This is not acceptable, but within the limit we accept this. Now what we are witnessing is what is happening in Syria now, something in the Middle East. It's a divide, and our political interpretation based on sectarian positioning. It's as if the Shia are supporting Bashar al-Assad, the Sunni are supporting the resistance, and we are accepting what in fact is coming from very far. It's coming from the war. It was even before that, but in contemporary, in recent time, it happened with the war between Iran and Iraq, Sunni and Shia, and then in Iraq, and then now in Syria, and now there is this divide between us. We have to be very, very cautious. We may disagree in our political understanding, but don't make it a religious divide by putting people outside Islam. You have no right, no one in this room. If anyone is saying here in this room, I am a Muslim, and I say, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadun Rasulullah, when he or she says this, you can't put someone outside Islam. It's not your right to do this. And the starting point is a Muslim who is saying, I am a Muslim, we acknowledge this. Now we disagree, and we might have some issues with some of the positioning, but this should be the principle beyond our political differences of interpretation as to what is happening in the Middle East. Let us start with this. But it means that you have to be committed. It's very, you are very passive on this. Very often, the ordinary Muslims are blaming the leadership not to do the job, but the problem here, the problem of Muslims is not only a problem of leadership, it's a problem of followers, of ordinary Muslims who are nurturing this sense of sectarian positioning. And add to this something which is one of the great, I keep on repeating this, one of the great challenges for the Muslims
This one is dying again. In the States, it will be also the division between social classes, between African American and new American citizens. All these problems is here, and we have to deal with them. But it means that this is your job. The leadership is not going to change anything if at the grassroots you don't do the job. You don't start yourself connecting between people who are coming from different traditions, coming from different backgrounds and origins.
Two more questions, and inshallah we'll close with that.
I took all the time. I took all the time.
If the Prophet ﷺ is insulted, mocked, or ridiculed, how should a Muslim react so that he or she will not be held accountable on the day of judgment that he didn't do anything?
Yes, that's a good question. The first attitude, which is not to respond to insults by insulting or by being aggressive. What we saw, I'm sorry, after the cartoon issue, I was in the Middle East, and I went to Pakistan. I was scared of what I saw. And people being, what they were shouting and even in a way which was so emotional that it's very scary. We have to be very cautious. And after what the movie and the video here, the best way, first, is not to have a philosophy of reacting. You need to be prepared beforehand. And the best preparation is all what we said now, is the way you are with the Prophet ﷺ. It's not only when he's insulted you react. Before reacting because he's insulted, learn to love him before reacting when he's insulted. Love him in the way, in the deep teachings and lessons that we can get out of his life. And then when you get this, when he's insulted, you should try to understand who is going to provoke you. Because some they understood exactly, the guy who was behind the movie, he knew exactly what he was doing at the time he was doing it. And he knew that he was going to get the reaction. And we had some Muslims, they got the message. In the Netherlands, Get Wilders was saying, in few months, it started like this, I'm going to tear apart the Quran, and I'm going to show that this book is a book which is like the Nazi Mein Kampf. And he was keeping on, and the media were covering this. It became a big story, a big thing. And he was preparing the movie Fitna on internet. And the Muslims were prepared to this. And they said, no reaction. No, don't react. This is exactly what he wants. And they got it right. At the end, he had himself to thank the Muslims for not reacting in a violent way. He was clever enough to get the media. And the Muslims were clever enough not to enter into the game. So I think that not to respond to attack, and what I said when I was in Denmark, when the whole story started in Europe, I said to the Muslims, take an intellectual critical distance, don't react, just take a distance and look beyond them. Just show them that, by the way, you are calm, that you are articulate in your answer. You talk about the Prophet ﷺ. By the way, the book that you have here on the Prophet ﷺ was translated into Danish, but the very newspaper who in fact published the cartoon. They published it into as to show to the people that we were not against. And say, okay, welcome, good job. Answer in a way which is wise, but please don't confuse wisdom with a silence out of fear. I don't want to be visible. I don't want them to know that I'm a Muslim. You have some Muslims in this room even who are going to say when they are attacked, no, you know what? I'm a moderate. I'm a good one. Meaning the others I don't know. Don't be like this. Be proud with wisdom and not scared with no courage.
which is not the same.
The last question is, how can we, it's regarding reforming and transformation, how can we take it from individual level to the collective level? That's a lecture by itself, but you can answer it.
So say it again, the beginning, what?
This is regarding transformation and reforming. How can we take it from the individual level to the collective level?
Yes, it's true, it's another lecture. No, look, what I wanted to do when it came to the Prophet ﷺ, it's clear that half of his life is to transform the individuals and to make it a collective project. This was the mission. But I think that we should not be simplistic in the way we understand this. Now, my first objective and goal in the lecture this evening is really to talk to every one of us here and say, okay, look, you might have to deepen your relationship to the Messenger. And for the people who are not Muslims, to get an understanding that the teaching and the lessons that we get out of his life are deep as to the spiritual dimension, as to the personal commitment, as to this way of respecting, thanking, serving, and transforming. This is the Prophet ﷺ. Now, this is the main goal. Now, how we can go to something which is now a collective thing? This is where the Muslims, and for example, look at what is happening in the United States. Muna was saying at the beginning of the lecture, in the last 10 years, what the Muslims have been doing is now many more organizations. We are doing the job. And I would say, remain positive. As I said, the Prophet ﷺ was always looking at the positive side of the individuals. You have to do exactly the same with the communities. Look at the positive side. The communities are working more and more. Of course, we have lots of weaknesses and lots of things are lacking, but still there are things that are happening. What is necessary now is all what we are saying, all the qualities that we are talking about now, they should come out of our Muslim organizations, and we have in the United States to go from the spiritual journey, individual spiritual journey, to something which is more structured and organized. It's time now to do something which is the institutionalization of Islam in the United States. To have institutions, and to what the Prophet ﷺ was doing in many fields. He came, he organized mosques. He came, he organized the market. He came, he was facing a political jihad against the powerful for the sake of the poor. He had many fronts. What we have to do now is to specialize our take on every specific field. If you want to deal with the poor, do it in the right way. If you want to deal with politics, do it in the right way. If you want to deal with economy, deal with it in the right way, as professional. And the Prophet ﷺ was saying, Allah yuhibbu idha amala ahadukum amala an yutqinah. Meaning, if you do something, you have to have a good master of what you are doing. What does it mean? Choose your field. Don't try to do everything and you do it in a way which is not specialized. For example, the center that we have now is 10 fields. What we want is some people who are specialized in environment, some people who are specialized in gender, some people who are specialized in psychology, some people who are specialized in media, some people who are specialized in education, some people who are specialized in politics, some people who are specialized in arts. We have all these fields, but now we need Muslims who are not amateur when it comes to transforming for the better. If you want to respect even your profession, you need to have a good command of the knowledge. And then you use this to serve the people. And then you use this service to transform the world for the better. But we need institutionalization and more professionalism. This is what is missing today in our work. We have lots of goodwill, but not enough expertise when it comes to what we are talking about. So you should not be ulama as people knowing the Quran and the Hadith. You are not going to be, all of you are not going to be this. But at least you should in your field be the best
and getting the best knowledge and try to serve the best in the best way, and in order to find people who can create institutions where we are contributing to the better future in this society. It's a task, it's a challenge, and in fact it's a jihad in itself. But you know, the jihad in the real sense, the true meaning of jihad, resisting, getting the knowledge, and transforming for what is good. This is the transformation between individual understanding and collective implementation. Insha'Allah. Wallahu a'lam wa a'la wa ahkam.